RugbyRenegade.com, the #1 online strength and conditioning program for rugby. Are you ready to get bigger, stronger, fitter, and faster and dominate your opposition? Welcome to the Rugby Renegade podcast, where we build machines.
Hello and welcome to the Rugby Renegade podcast. My name's Jamie Bain and today I interview Paddy Anson, strength and conditioning coach at the English Institute of Sport. It's a real pleasure to have Paddy as a guest on the podcast. He's the guy who gave me my first full-time professional role in the Premiership rugby, and I worked with Paddy for 4 years. He's a great guy, and he's got loads of knowledge, and I'm sure you'll get a lot out of this if it's just for training to improve your own rugby performance, or if you want to be a strength and conditioning coach in rugby or other sports. He's got a great CV and a great track record, and he's a great guy. So have a good listen and let us know your thoughts. Hi Paddy, welcome to the Rugby Renegade podcast. Why don't we start by you just telling us a little bit about your background and how you got into strength and conditioning and some of the teams and sports you work with.
Yeah, hi Jamie. I started really getting into SSE when I joined the Marines. So I did the tough training. Obviously, you know all about Marine training. It's probably one of the toughest forms of military training, and it was a direction I wanted to go. I wanted to challenge myself and see if I could handle it, see if I could stick it out, and I thrived in it. I really enjoyed it. And I suppose in the first 2 years after finishing Marine training, you just had to keep on top of your fitness. You were no longer pushed by the company commanders. You're no longer pushed by the staff sergeants. It was all self-led. So myself and a group of mates would go to the gym every night. So the daily schedule would start with either a boxing circuit or a troop run, anywhere between 6 and 8 miles for the troop run. They'd change it around the following day and do a boxing circuit, and they'd do back the troop run. So you get at least 3 troop runs in a week, which kept you on top of your basic fitness. And that was challenging enough to get you running with small breeze blocks that you had to carry in each hand, half cup breeze blocks, and it was a real challenging thing I used to do. And then they used to put you into boxing circuits the day after, first thing in the morning. So in between those sessions, you'd have your military skills, whether you're doing jungle training, preparing to go to the jungle, or preparing to go to the desert, or Northern Ireland, the Arctic in Norway. So whatever that theme was for that 6 months leading into it, you used to train up for that. And then, on the back of your weapon skills and your live firing, you'd then have the evening to yourself. And my mates and I would go to the gym. We'd work on general strength. A lot of it was probably what you'd call CrossFit now. It was very much circuit type training, lots of bodyweight exercises interspersed with a lot of compound and unilateral single movement dumbbell work. And it was just one of those things you did. And then when you went away on tour, whether you're in the jungle or the desert or the Arctic or Northern Ireland, you always had the opportunity to train. And even when I was on ship on HMS Nottingham, we were doing boarding parties off the coast of Bosnia, and you'd still do punch bag work, you'd do your focus mitt work, you'd do circuits and run around the ship, and then you'd come back into it. And it was a destroyer, and you used to have some good sessions and pushing each other on. And I suppose I got that real thrill from SNC and CrossFit and circuit type training, and this would have been back in 93, 94. And then it got to a point there where I had a decision to make. Did I want to become a PTI and specialise as a physical training instructor in the Royal Marines? Or did I want to go down the Special Forces route, which was an area I always wanted to go down? And I decided to go for the Special Forces route. But to cut a long story short, I contracted bowel disorder, ulcerative colitis, while I was going to the SBS. And up in the Brecon Beacons, they wouldn't let me go to the jungle to do the next part selection. So I stayed attached to the SBS for another 2 years, and then the decision came that the ulcerative colitis wasn't going to go away. They were never going to let me go into an environment where I was compromised, especially when you had to carry a patient out. You just couldn't do that in the jungle or the Arctic. So they made a decision, gave me the opportunity to stay in the Marines and do a job I didn't really want to do. I could have been there for another 22 years, but I decided to take a medical pension, a war pension, and leave the Marines. And that's when I studied at Exeter University. I did 3 years there in a sports science and sports and exercise science degree. At the same time, I was working with Exeter Chiefs. They were in National 1 at the time, which was the championship equivalent now. And I suppose from there, this passion for strength and conditioning and really getting into the heavy gist of proper strength and conditioning rather than the CrossFit and the circuits I've been used to in the Marines. I challenged my theory, I challenged my coaching, I did additional courses. I did a master's at UWIC in coaching science, and I just became more of an all-round strength and conditioning coach. And that's the point that I wanted to, challenge myself, maybe look to become a head strength and conditioning coach and see where my career path went. So I applied for a job at Hartbury College from my time at Exeter Chiefs. Hartbury College was just a farming college at the time. Malcolm Wharton headed up. There was Sean Holly and Andrew Stanley, who were both dealing with Hartbury College and with Gloucester Academy. And the three of us worked really well together. I headed up the strength and conditioning. Sean headed up the attack, and Andrew Stanley headed up the forwards coaching and some of the defence. And we went in that 4-year period to then be challenging Loughborough in the final at Twickenham in the Booster final. It's called Bucks now, it was the Booster at the time. And it was a good period, really, because working with academy level players in Gloucester Academy and working with academy level players at Hartbury College in a multitude of sports, but primarily rugby, gave you a real insight into, okay, what's the next level now? How do I challenge myself? And an opportunity came to go to Worcester Warriors. So I left Hartbury College and went to Worcester Warriors as an assistant strength and conditioning coach. Learned a great deal in that year there. John Brain is unfortunately passed away now. He was the director of rugby at the time, along with a guy called Anthony Eddy, he's now in Ireland, but he was obviously from Australia and did a bit of son's work in Australia. He's now working in Ireland. And we had a great coaching group at Worcester. It gave me a real insight into the Premiership. So I'd seen academy level Premiership rugby with Gloucester and Hartbury College, but going to Worcester Warriors really opened my eyes into the demands of working week in, week out in a Premiership club, run by a good group of people, run by a good, diligent, hard-working director of rugby and his assistant coaches. And Phil Richards was the head strength and conditioning coach at the time. I learned a lot from him. And when a job came up to go to Exeter Chiefs as head of strength and conditioning, I jumped at the opportunity because it was the club I'd started at. Pete Druitt and Rob Baxter were taking over there, and it was some exciting times. They were moving from the county ground. They were moving into Sandy Park. And I suppose I wanted to challenge myself and see what I could do as a head of strength and conditioning in the Premiership, and hopefully get into the Premiership. So I went to Exeter Chiefs. I was there for 6 years, with 4 years in the Championship, and then 2 years in the Premiership. And getting into the Premiership was a fantastic part of my career, probably a highlight of my career. And working with Rob Baxter and Ali Heath, Tony Rowe, Ricky Pello, Mark Twiggs, Dave Sylvester, all these people that helped us to get into the Premiership, and notwithstanding fantastic players and a fantastic club, fantastic fans, it was a really good part of my career and part of my development. John Brain took over at Gloucester with Brian Redpath and Carl Hogg, and they interviewed me for a role at Gloucester, and Exeter offered me a 3-year deal to stay at Exeter. And yet again, I wanted to see how I could cope back at the club that I'd been involved with, the academy. And I was there for 4 years and finished at the end of last season and went straight to the Elite High Performance Centre at Bisham Abbey in September this year. And I'm now the technical lead at Bisham Abbey. It's a great environment, some fantastic S&C coaches, fantastic medical, and it's a very different role now, where it's preparing for the Tokyo cycle now. The athletes are striving for gold medal, silver or bronze. They just want to medal. That would be their career achievement. And if you can get gold with these athletes, then all the best. That's their real challenge, their real focus, and it's very different from professional rugby, where the athletes I work with potentially had a different mindset, which was, to stake a living in a professional sport that was very demanding, collision based, and you had to probably try and earn as much as you could in a short space of time. It's different now. It's Bishop Abbey, where I'm working with GB rugby, GB hockey, Olympic para-canoeing, and it's a very, very different environment. But that's pretty much in a nutshell where my career's taken me so far.
Yeah, that's quite a CV, Pad. And also I think it's worth pointing out that when you were at Hartpury, you were one of the first S&Cs in a university at the time, weren't you?
I was the only S&C, yeah. So it's Hartpury College. The Hartpury we know now, I'd like to think, was founded on the work that certainly Malcolm Wharton, who drove it as a principal. He had these huge ideas, and he wanted the S&C and the coaching group to ensure that a group of farmers, they literally were a group of farmers at the time, with a few guys who were doing a rugby studies course and a few guys who were doing a business studies course, who came together, trained on a pitch that's nowhere near the level of pitch there's now. There was no real sports or no real gym facility that you can see now. It was pretty much a spit and sawdust environment, and we had to get on with it. And in that four-year period, the colleges went from strength to strength. I started using the students as interns. Stu Pickering, who obviously was a technical, he's involved in technical performance with the English Institute of Sport now. He was one of my assistants at the time, and his pathway took him to Worcester Warriors in the academy, and then to the first team, and then to head up the S&C department. So he's had a great career forged from being an intern with myself at Hartpury College, and the college has gone from strength to strength. Malcolm Wharton at the time said, I want to see Hartpury College in the championship in 10 years' time. And to be fair, they're not far off it now. If you look at their track record and where they are standing this year, it'll be a very proud moment if they get to the championship, because I can look back at 2001, 2002, 2003 and 2004 as special years that forged where it is now. They gave it the foundation and the groundwork to be an outstanding college.
Yeah, definitely. I think they're still unbeaten, and every win they've had a bonus point, haven't they? So they'll take some stopping. But why don't we just take a little bit of a look back at, obviously, being involved in the Marines, that's a massive part of your life. But how do you think that's affected you as a coach, or your coaching style? What have you taken from your time in the Marines that you use today?
Well, I was hard working in the Marines anyway. I always wanted to be the best specialist in my troop, in my unit. I always wanted to, whether it was point man in Northern Ireland, or whether it was the person doing the map reading in Norway, the person who was given control and leadership responsibilities, and also to be the best soldier I could be. And that was always my drive. And so obviously that next step, if you're in the Royal Marines and you're already seen as pretty much an elite unit of men, to then go for special forces, whether it's the SAS or the SBS, it becomes the pinnacle of your career. And that was a huge knockback for me. I actually did my dissertation in university on how that actually affected me as an individual, and how it gave me that determination and drive to try and be even more successful than I could have been in the Marines. Because when you take a knockback like that, when you're flying through selection, you're enjoying it, you're doing all the things that you've worked hard to achieve in your career, you know that you're a few months away from being badged as a special forces operative. To then have that knockback gave me an even more hard-working mindset, and the choice was there. Do I stay in the Marines and do a job I didn't necessarily want to do? Given I had loads of great mates and friends there and people that I respected, or do I challenge myself and move forward in a different path? So it certainly has affected my coaching career. It's made me very diligent. It's made me very hardworking. I think I've got those leadership qualities that were eked on me in the Marines, but also lead by example. And I'd like to think that any athletes, whether it's professional now at the Elite Performance Centre in Bishop Abbey, or whether it's rugby players in the past, would all, think that I was a person who was prepared to put myself in a dark place just as they were, and not look to just program for them and not know what I was programming. It's a big part is to make sure that I know exactly what I'm programming, that what I'm coaching the players or the athletes to achieve is possible. And in a nutshell, I suppose it's that resilience, that ability to get back and do all over again. That's been my real driver. And I've had to restart now. I've gone from being a head of strength and conditioning in rugby union, taking a huge pay cut to go into the Elite Performance Centre here at Bishop Abbey. But there's a different stimulus. There's a different drive that you're working with different individuals, different coaches, different background staff, and it's challenging me in a whole load of other ways to, again, hopefully put me on that pathway to be becoming a better coach in the future.
Yeah, and I can certainly vouch for you that you practice what you preach, having seen you run around the track with the boys when they're testing on the 800 and 1500, and I've actually seen you beat the boys, so I can attest to that. But
obviously don't put me in, don't give me a squat competition or a Olympic lifting competition.
No,
I'll struggle.
Wouldn't dream of it. So moving on from after the Marines, your time at Exeter, your second time at Exeter, when you got your first head position there. You began with them in the Championship, and obviously you were there for 6 years and brought them up into the Premiership, and solidified them in the Premiership. When you started there, what sort of things did you see that you needed to improve, whether it's facilities or just physically in the athletes you had there? What did you see you needed to do to make them sort of Premiership contenders?
Yeah, the big attraction to go back to Exeter was I knew the club. I still knew some of the players, and I had a fantastic rapport with Rob Baxter when he was the captain of Exeter Chiefs back in 1999, 2000. When I was working with him and I was coaching him, I just came out of the Marines. He was a great leader. He led by example. He put himself into a dark place with the players. He worked hard. Himself and Gary Willis and Richie Baxter, these individuals that had a huge ambition for Exeter Chiefs at the time. So to go back to Exeter Chiefs, really from a Premiership club like Worcester Warriors, it was a bit of a no-brainer. I knew that I could be challenged. I knew that there was a mindset from Tony Rowe and the board to get into the Premiership. And Pete Druitt and Rob Baxter at the time sold me a good opportunity to go and see what I could do and help deliver at Exeter Chiefs. And because I knew the county ground, I knew where the players had trained before. They trained in dog kennels. So when I was training, they worked out of a gym. There was a dog kennel. The track was a mud track that they used for either greyhound racing, or they used for the motocross racing with motorbikes. And in the middle of all that was this mud bath of a pitch with a one stand on the outside, which that was essentially the county ground. It was a fantastic environment, a fantastic old ground. But I suppose I knew the people there, and it wasn't a hard sell to go back. And I went back to Exeter Chiefs at the time that they were building Sandy Park and knocking down the county ground. So we were housing officers just around the corner, and we'd go into Sandy Park on a regular basis just to make sure that the facility was being done to standards we wanted, the pitch was being done to the standards we wanted. And I was training the players out of Fitness First and another local gym nearby. I was taking them to the track, taking them to the hills. I was doing all the things I would do with a professional, fully professional club like Worcester Warriors or Gloucester Rugby. Given that the players, a lot of them were still working, and they train hard in the morning, train hard in the evening. I suppose I was part of that transition then into, right, let's see if we can make Exeter Chiefs a full-time unit. And towards the end of that first season at Exeter Chiefs, Peter managed to get the majority of players on full-time contracts. A few of the players left, and as with any professional club, there's a turnover of staff and players. But when I first went in, I just knew that the team needed to change, that the mindset of the team needs to change. Where Exeter's strength was always set piece. They had a fantastic mindset around set piece. Rob Baxter had driven that set piece for 10 or 15 years as a player, and he was going to drive that set piece as a coach. And the problem was at the county ground was pretty much all he could do. I know that Exeter beat a lot of fantastic teams just by having that dominant set piece, and having, I think it was Tony App at the time, dropping goals from anywhere or kicking his penalties, because it literally was all he could do on a mud path, which was the county ground. So going to Sandy Park on a fantastic surface, a flat surface that wasn't watered down every Wednesday to make sure that it was a quagmire for the weekend. It was a brilliant surface to train on and play on, and I knew that the team would have to change. They'd have to adapt. They'd have to become a faster team. They'd have to become a running-based team. It'd have to be a team that worked on speed off the floor and worked around set piece, still kept that set piece parity with other teams, and kept as a strength, but worked on a wide game from that. And I was reading a book by Herm Edwards at the time, who was one of the New York Jets coaches, a great guy really, and one of the quotes he came up with was, "What goes in the dark comes to the light," and I hit the players with that pretty much in the first week I was at Exeter Chiefs. And that group of the players obviously were not the same group of players that went into the Premiership, but I pretty much kept that theme with these guys. What goes in the dark comes to light. What you do away from training, where I can't see you, is going to come to the light on a match day. So if I know that when you finish, you might be eating all the right things in front of me at work, you might be snacking on the right things at work, you might be filling in the right nutrition diary in front of me at work. When we have our individual reviews, when we're in the gym, I can see you lifting well. I can see you training appropriately and training well on the pitch and doing the additional extras and the additional skills needed to be a professional player. But I want to know what you're doing away from that. And the only way I can see that is if you have a stormer week in, week out on the pitch, and you have that consistency about you, where I know that you've done the right building blocks in your working week to make sure you can, A, justify being a professional player, but B, hit that target of one day being a part of a group that got Exeter Chiefs into the Premiership. Because let's face it, whatever players played in the history of the club has been a part of a club's success or a part of that club's downfall. So it was trying to get that mindset away from dog kennels and this sweaty spit and sawdust gym into a fantastic elite gym at Sandy Park, where I had pretty much a free rein of budget to develop that. To have, instead of a dog kennel or a dog track and a motocross track, it was an indoor track inside the facility at Sandy Park. Instead of a mud bath pitch, at a desert pitch. I wanted the players to be grounded. I challenged them week in, week out, and said to them, listen, when you play Coventry, when you play Birmingham Solihull, when you play Rotherham, they're fantastic clubs in their own rights, but they want the facilities you've got. They want to be full-time professional athletes. They want everything you have. So don't take what you got for granted, and let's make sure that we show that we can be a professional team, and that we show that we can be a team that aspires to go into the Premiership one day.
Yeah, I really like what you said about, obviously, consistency is so underrated in terms of, performance and physical performance, and also it's a good message for any players out there that it's not just good enough to, lift weights a few hours a week and train hard in rugby training. It's those other decisions you make in and around that time that really add up in the long run. So some really good messages there. Now let's move on to kind of try and figure out a bit about your SSE philosophy. So what are kind of the main pillars of your SSE philosophy?
The first one, and this is one I've held ever since leaving the Marines, is to know my athletes, know the people I work with, know their strengths, know their weaknesses, and to program accordingly. it would be like a coach going into a new club. If you've got a group of players who are big and strong and powerful and have this fantastic mindset around set piece and scrum and line out and driving more, then don't take that away from them. Don't turn around and say, right, we're going to have a quick fancy down wide game. Let's work to our strengths and see how we can improve our strengths, and then any weaknesses we have, work on those as well. But always go to your strengths first and make sure that you can build on those pillars before you start looking at other areas. So fundamentally, I like my athletes to lift explosively when appropriate. I like them to lift heavy when appropriate. I'm big into their compound movements, Olympic lifts, squat variations, and making sure that is part of the program every single week. It has to be, because if you go away from that and then come back into it, a few weeks down the line, they're going to have soreness, they're going to have DOMs, they're going to have a different mindset. They've got a game to play that weekend, so you can't afford to be messing around with a program just because you want to either please other people, please the players, or please other staff. You have to look at what the players need and not what they want. So that was a big part of it. Now, whilst my whole career I've been trying to create big, robust, resilient athletes, this move now has actually challenged my whole coaching philosophy. I'm now at a point in my career where I used to think that my gym was a reflection of me. So chains, big heavy chains, big power racks, squat racks, sleds, a sprint track, plyometric boxes, big heavy dumbbells. That sort of was a reflection of my program. It was a reflection of me as a person. It was a reflection of what I wanted the players to achieve, to be as big and strong and powerful as they could be. Because in collision-based sports, as far as I'm concerned, that has to be the basic foundation, and then you can produce other elements of strength conditioning from that. But this is challenging now, because I'm in a situation now where my gym has changed from that to bands and kettlebells and lighter dumbbells and Swiss balls. I've had to completely adapt my whole coaching philosophy, and that's been a real challenge. I worked with, just before this podcast, I was working with an Olympic Paralympic canoeist, and she's got transverse myelitis, so she won gold medal at Rio. She's an absolute amazing athlete, and I can't speak high enough of her, but it's made me really humble now in the last few weeks working with her, how I'm having to lift her off a wheelchair onto a piece of equipment. I'm having to challenge what I'm doing with her training-wise to make sure that she's getting that oblique strength and transverse abdominal strength and general core strength, and rotating through the whole core and the whole trunk, firing the lats to make sure she's got as big as strong a lats as she has to power herself down the lake in her K1. And it has really, really challenged me, because it's definitely a very humbling experience, and it's very different working with female athletes as well. You have to challenge how you approach them, how you talk to them. You have to challenge how you converse with them. You have to challenge how you program for them, because they're very different, and in a way they're actually more challenging of you. They question you more. They want to know, well, why are we doing that? So if I give a player that I've been used to at Gloucester Rugby or Exeter Chiefs a program, they just go away and do it. Whereas they'll say to you, well, why am I doing this? And then there's another Paralympian canoeist who's actually she's gold medal at Rio as well, and I'm working with her, and she's a physio. So every exercise I prescribe and every exercise I'm talking about or discussing with her, we're still going into the intricacies of her actual disability, and say, well, why am I doing this? If I can't do this, why are you asking me to do that? Why? And to go from my programming and sit in the gym, and actually what you do, what computer says on a piece of paper, actually isn't what the reality isn't on the gym floor. So I am certainly been taken out of my comfort zone, and it has actually made me a better coach, without doubt, this last 3 months at Bishop Abbey.
Yeah, I think you just highlighted the importance of, like, firstly having a really good needs analysis of who you're working with, the sport, etc., but also being able to be adaptable and communicate with the athlete as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, I wouldn't say you're renowned for this, but I know when you first came to Gloucester, some of the players were a bit shocked at some of the swimming sessions we did, and a lot of people will, recognise swimming as being used a lot in recovery as a recovery modality in rugby, but you used it to improve fitness as well. Why don't you talk a bit about that and the benefits of swimming?
Yeah, first and foremost, swimming is an excellent form of recovery. So within the programme, yes, there was swimming first in the morning, 3 days a week in pre-season, but I scheduled those 3 days to complement the programme. So yes, they're working hard, whether they're doing water polo or swimming, or whether they're doing underwater hockey, the ox push. There was a reason for my madness. And I came in, and I think there are a few players discussing with their agents who was this person that's come from Exeter Chiefs ever before they met me, and they were quite worried about what I was going to be doing as part of the programming. But there was a method to my programming there. It was to make sure that those swimming sessions were on the back of a tough day. So Monday was always going to be a tough day. So being in the pool first thing on a Monday morning at the Lido in Cheltenham, where you had a 50-metre pool, I had also booked in experts who Cheltenham were the current UK champions at not just playing water polo but delivering water polo sessions. So you had a very good, tough, competitive environment playing water polo. You had myself at the other end of the pool doing octopus with the players where they're pushing a puck underwater, and again there's that competitive element. So you're getting that breathing efficiency, that economy, lung economy, and then you had you in the middle running the players who were again just doing not mindless but really hard work in terms of widths, or picking up bricks from the bottom, bringing them back, and then swimming a bit further, and then doing relays, and this working this as a round robin challenged the players massively. There's been some studies where you look at lactate production in the pool, especially with a big player who's very muscle bound. They struggle to maintain high efforts because of the lactate buildup. And what you can get in a pool in a 20 or 30 minute session would probably take you an hour and a quarter within a gym circuit to achieve. Now, obviously, the gym circuit is more specific to the game, but sometimes there's a need to unload the athletes and prepare them for a heavy lifting session in the afternoon. But they've got time to recover in the morning. They'll eat well at the club. They'll do a skills session or a speed session in between the two, and then they're ready to lift in the afternoon, or vice versa. So the programming was there for a reason. A, to be really competitive and to have a competitive environment outside of rugby. B, to see who was prepared to go to a dark place, when they're out of their comfort zone. And C, because there was this lactate production, which players, not all players, but a lot of players, especially those who hadn't experienced swimming, and a lot of the Tongans and the Fijians would really struggle with that environment. And it's good to take them out of their comfort zone, make them become comfortable with being uncomfortable all the time, and that's a big part of pre-season. And then in season, that didn't stop. So I'd take the rehab players twice or three times a week, and I'm still doing the same now at Bisham Abbey with the rehab players. Although it's not in a pool, we've got an endless pool. So I take them for swimming or aqua jogging sessions, which again put them in a dark place, see how they thrive or survive, and work them hard. And those rehab sessions with the players at Gloucester meant that no one could ever hide. There was no hiding place. If you had 3 or 4 players doing a constructive swimming session in the morning for half an hour at 6:45, that would set them up for the day. Then they had time to see the physio and then get on with their rehab exercises, or go into the gym with yourself and then have a productive afternoon. And I think building that into the program helps with recovery, helps with rehabilitation, and then when the team needs to recover, I would then take the team as a whole, forwards and backs split, into the pool as well, and make sure that they were recovering properly, doing the right stretches, using that hydrotherapy element, which probably is, apart from sleep, I would suggest that hydrotherapy is the foremost form of recovery to utilise.
Yeah, and what was interesting as well is like the guys who were in that rehab group, even once they kind of got fit again and were back in the team, a lot of them would still continue to go to the swimming because they felt the benefits from it. So that's a real
that's the thing, yeah, absolutely, and it brought this teamship about with the rehab group, and they were all in it together, whether they're in the gym or whether in the pool, they're in it together, and they almost didn't want to let it go. They wanted to then continue, and there were strictly rehab sessions where sometimes I had 10 or 12 players when actually only 2 or 3 of them were injured.
Yeah.
So again, that was challenging as to how do I change the program around to accommodate these other players, because they wanted to be there, but make sure as well that they're ready for the rugby session and the gym and the speed work later on.
Yeah, but also like you say, we're dealing with big guys, and they do a lot of running in the rugby training, but you still need to increase their fitness, but not to the point where they get injured through overtraining from the running. So if it's a really good fitness stimulus, then get them in the pool and get them swimming, improve their cardiovascular system. Right. This is a question we ask all the guests on the podcast. What do you think is the biggest mistake rugby players make when it comes to S&C?
That's a tough one, Jamie. I think there's a lot of mistakes that players make outside of training. I think there's a lot of mistakes that players make, possibly even within training when we're not watching or when we're not around. But if I was to really think long and hard about this, the biggest mistake, I think, it probably isn't a mistake, it's probably their mindset or the way they are, is those players that train like Tarzan and play like Jane. I can never understand how a player can clean and jerk 125 kilograms and then play like a pussycat on the pitch. I can't get my head around that. And there's a mentality and there's a fragility, I think, across sport where players and athletes just don't have the mental toughness and the mental resilience to compete at the highest level. So that's a big bugbear of mine is to see players lift and shift huge weights, and then to see players lift and shift huge weights explosively and dynamically, and think, well, I've just seen you pull that bar from a block on a tender. I could never even hit that figure. Yet I've just seen you do that. Why are you not cutting someone in half on the pitch? And it is a combat sport. It's a confrontation sport. Players get injured, but I think that the players who go into the game with the wrong mindset are probably the ones that get injured the most. But ultimately, those same people, people's in professional sport, livelihoods are at stake. So if I'm training someone hard in the gym and they're working hard in the gym, I can never understand why they just can't put it in on the pitch. And that probably comes a bit from my military training. You work with your peers to be the best you can be, whether that's a soldier or whether it's a signaller or whether it's a sniper or whether it's someone who does the jumps, the parachute jumps. You want within that unit to have people around you who you know you'd want to go to war with, and it frustrates me when there's players being paid a lot of money who just don't do the job on the pitch come match day.
Yeah, and do you think that's also a bit to do with kind of like transfer of training? They don't feel the benefit, or they'll get stronger and more powerful in the gym, but then they don't try and transfer it into the rugby training they do, and then come the game, it's lost.
Yeah, I don't think that. It's not just rugby players. I think footballers probably have the same problem. You have players who've paid a lot of money to do a job, and it's very frustrating to see them in an environment where they're doing all the right things in front of you, but it's that what I said to you before about what goes in the dark comes to light. What are they doing outside of that? Are they doing additional bodybuilding sessions when actually they should be out practicing their skills? Are they doing additional sessions that are vanity sessions rather than being in watching the computer and analysing the opposition and thinking like, what is my counterpart doing? Why is my counterpart so good? Why is my counterpart so consistent? And I suppose the other thing as well is train the mind as well. I can't stand there and train the mind. A, I don't know how to train the mind, but B, it's something that has to come from within. There has to be a desire and a desperation from within each athlete or player within a team sport and individual sport to be the best they can be. And if they're not prepared to do those bits, those building blocks outside of training, then they will be that person who can lift well, but either has no aggression or has no mental resilience or hasn't spent enough time studying your position. So I think there's a lot more to the game that we work on in the gym and within the bounds of the performance environment.
Yeah, definitely. I think
we
carry on. Okay.
Yeah, we don't get the same buy-in from players to do those little things really well. That would be probably a big part of it.
Yeah, definitely. Now, last question, because I know you're busy, so I'm conscious of time. What would be your advice to an upcoming strength coach?
I've worked with a lot of interns in the last 18 years of my career in professional rugby, and I'm working with interns currently at the High Performance Centre here at Bisham. My biggest advice would be to do the little things really well, do the basics really well. There's a good YouTube video I'd recommend to any of the listeners who, whether they're rugby or other sports or S&C or one up and coming S&C coaches, is to read this thing about he's a guy in the US Navy SEAL. He's an admiral in the Navy SEALs, and he was part of the group that took down bin Laden. And his name's William McCraven. If you go onto YouTube and look up that, it just says "make your bed." And what he talks about is that first task of the day. What's that first task of the day for any person in life, whether it's military or civilian, and that's to make your bed. And that's the first task of the day. If you don't do that, then you've already failed at that first task. And I have talked to this with young S&C coaches, since I've seen this, and a few of the players have seen this as well. And in fact, it was one of the players, Willie Himes, who introduced me to it on YouTube. So I use it a lot now because you have to do that first task of the day, because then that sets you up. You then turn up to work on time, and you turn up to work looking like you're ready because you made your bed. You then probably had a shave, or you've had a shower, and you've washed, and you've put on deodorant. You come into work looking like you haven't just got out of bed. You turn up in the right kit. You enter the gym as a young aspiring S&C coach and intern, and you are basically going to be the product of what the athletes want to be, or the players. So if you turn up and look like a slob, then they'll become a slob. So I think you can talk a lot of interns and young S&C and aspiring S&C coaches to work at different strength attributes, or look at the lifting, or look at the squat variables, or look at GPS technology. But actually that means Jack when actually you should be someone that leads by example. So if you turn up into the gym drinking a cup of coffee, the players will turn up into the gym thinking they can come in and drink a cup of coffee. It doesn't matter how young you are. And then they'll turn to me and say, well, we just saw Jack turning up with a cup of coffee, so why should we do it? Or we saw Jack turn up late, so why should we do it? Or we didn't see Jack turn up the gym afterwards, so why shouldn't we? And you make yourself employable by being diligent. If you do your job, no matter how mean it is, to the best of your ability, then people recognise it, and I will recognise it. And if I have to go around as a head of strength conditioning, having to clear up after people that I work with, or I have to go around and micromanage them and make sure they're doing their job properly, then I'm not getting the best out of them, and they're never going to be a member of staff that I want to have. So that would be the best thing I would say. You can come in as a young intern and give you all this great technology, and talk about your Excel spreadsheets, and talk about the work you've done in your project and your dissertation at university. And actually, you might have more knowledge than me now. I'm 18 years in the game. I'm probably lacking some of the knowledge that some of these young strength coaches have. It's excellent what they're studying now and what they're doing and what they're being made to learn. But the reality is, if they can't do the basics well, if you can't do the little things, then I can't trust them to do the big things. And I think that, in a nutshell, would be my advice to youngsters coming into the profession.
Yeah, great advice, Paddy. Thanks for that. So, lastly, Paddy, like I know you normally ask where we can find out more about you, but I know you're a bit of a social media recluse. So, kind of, what's the future hold for you? Obviously, at the EIS now, is that your plan to go to Tokyo?
Well, I think you know me long enough, Jamie. There's potential for that to happen, and if I'm put in that position where I'm offered the full Tokyo cycle, for the next 4 years, and I take that job, it's potentially there now already for me. I'm not sure, where those contract negotiations are going to be in the next couple of months, but I'm sure I'll find out. But the person I am is, once I sign that contract, I'll be at the performance centre at Bishop Abbey for 4 years, because I owe it to the athletes, I owe it to the people I work with. In a short space of time, I'm already, part of the technical leadership within the establishment here. So if I start letting people down and then walk for another job because it's better paid or because what I've always wanted to do, then I'm not the principal person with the integrity that I keep telling people I have, which I know I have and I know I'll always have. So if that comes good, then that's the role I'm going to pursue for the next 4 years. If in the meantime something else comes up, then I'll look into that as well. But what this job has made me realise is that if you go around chasing financial packages or chasing contracts or chasing money, you'll never really have that success that you desire, because I believe I've been challenged more since September. I've been challenged more here than I have in rugby in the last 18 years. And that the reason for that is because I'm working with athletes who, they're not able-bodied, for starters. Some of these Paralympians, they as I said earlier, it brings a lot of humility to what you do. And then working with elite hockey players, their only goal is to get gold at the next Olympics. And yet their peers in rugby or football are earning the same amount in one day in an international game, and they're earning the whole year. So this isn't a what do you call it, a mecca I'm going on to try and change the world of strength conditioning, because everyone's different. But for me, it is to honour the contracts I'm given or have the opportunity to do, and be the best I can be. And if that means taking a different pathway, then I'll do that.
That's great, Paddy, and that's probably a very good lesson for upcoming S&C coaches as well. Paddy, thanks. It's been great to talk to you. Thanks for sort of sharing your time. I know how busy you are down at Bisham, and all the best in the future.
Thanks, Jamie. Pleasure.
Thank you, Paddy, for taking the time to talk to us. I've visited Paddy down at Bisham Abbey, and I know he's incredibly busy. So to get that time, 30 or 40 minutes to talk to him, there's loads of information in there. It's great to hear about his philosophy and career advice, and could have gone on for longer, but really appreciate managing to fit us into his busy schedule. In the meantime, guys, check out rugbyrenegade.com. More ebooks coming up, more articles, and of course more podcasts. And if you really want to stay in touch with the podcast, please subscribe to us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, and give us a 5-star review. Until next time.
Thanks for listening to the Rugby Renegade podcast. For more quality rugby strength and conditioning information, check us out at rugbyrenegade.com. Rugby Renegade, building machines.